My scripture reading for the day is taken from John, the 15th chapter, 12th through the 17th verse. This is my commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. Ye are my friends, if ye do whatsoever I command you. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth. But I have called you friends, for all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, and ordained you, that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit shall remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, that ye love one another. And thus is the scripture reading of St. John, 15th chapter, the 12th through the 17th verse. Again, I said to you, good morning. The commandment that Jesus gave, the greatest commandment, that ye love one another as I have loved you. First, let us understand that when Jesus said that ye love one another as I have loved you, let us internalize that it is the Christ consciousness speaking through the instrumentality of the man Jesus. That it is the Christ consciousness speaking through the man Jesus. Now, I want to shed some light on this next scripture or this next verse. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Now, in reading that scripture, the first thing might come to mind is me or whoever having to die for their friends or for a friend. But this scripture does not mean that one has to give or is asking one to give of one's physical life for his friend. Now, I'm going to try to keep this on the top of my head. We know that when people go into the military, they are not indoctrinated to go and give their life or their lives for their fellow man. They're indoctrinated to go and fight and give their lives for their country, not for their fellow man, but for their country. But in the country, there are one's fellow man. But we are indoctrinated to go and fight and to lay down our life or lives for our country. But this is not what Jesus meant. This is not what Jesus was saying when he said that a man laid down his life for his friend. The master teacher was saying that the life that we live that is not in accordance to the things of God, that one should be able to be willing to lay down those things that we participate in, that we find enjoyment in, that is not worthy or beneficial to the growth and unfoldment of our fellow man. In other words, lay down your life that pertains to the worldly things, those things that have hindered us from growing and unfolding. You see, I stand here and say that I laid down my life for the life of my friends. I laid down the worldly life that I once so enjoyed so that I could be resurrected in mind and in body and spirit, wherein I could be a beneficial blessing to my friends. I laid down the worldly life that I could pick up the spiritual life so that I could be a blessing to my fellow man. And this is the teaching of the Master. And as Jesus said, I call you not servants, but friends. And that which I have heard of my Father, I make known to you. That which the Spirit has revealed to me are those things that I share with you. That which the Father, the Spirit, has revealed to me are those things that I share with you. This is what Jesus was saying to his disciples. This is what the Spirit or the Christ consciousness is speaking to us right now. For he who has laid down his life for his friends and have heard the Spirit speaking within him are the things that I make known to my friends. To those of you that are able and willing to listen and follow the instructions. Then that scripture goes on as Jesus is teaching and saying, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit. It is the Christ consciousness speaking through the man Jesus that says, I have not, or you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. You know, when we first start out, we have no idea as to which direction should we go to find God. And if we have not been chosen, if we have not been called, then we don't know which way to go. We don't know what it is that we must do. And so it is the Christ consciousness or the Spirit of God within us. You see, we get a prompting within us. We get a feeling within us. Sometimes we have to be made to lie flat down on our backs by way of sickness and suffering before we internalize that I need to seek God that I may be delivered from what it is that I'm going through. Something within us, when we're at the bottom of the barrel, when we can't see our way out, there is something within us that says, seek me. Come unto me, all that labor and are heavily burdened, and I will give you rest unto your soul. And when that spirit has called you and ordained you. Now, I want you to understand this. And I've said this many times in the past. You know, for a lot of folks to become ministers, they have to go to school, seminary, Bible college to be ordained. But scripture states, I have chosen you and ordained you that ye shall go forth and bring fruit. Now, in reference to me, myself, and I've shared this story many times and I share it again this morning. When I was a very young man doing worldly things, and one of the things that I enjoyed doing was playing hooky from school. And I was in middle school, and one day I played hooky, as they say, didn't go to school, but back in those days it was called playing hooky. And I would spend my time down on the railroad tracks, hopping freight trains, riding freight trains up and down the railroad tracks. School was not an interest to me, but my math teacher was the one after school that was in charge of the gym. And after school, most kids went to gym to play basketball. On this particular day, I didn't go to school, but I was always one that wanted and liked to go to the gym. And this particular day that I had played hooky, made sure I got back in the area by the time school had let out, not thinking I went to the gym. And my math teacher said to me, Robert, I didn't see you in school today. And you know, if you don't come to school, you can't come into the gym. He said to me, he said, you need to do all that you can to get an education. Those were his words to me. And I looked at him and I said, I don't need an education because I'm going to be a teacher of life. From whence those words came, I don't know, but they came forth from my mouth. And when my math teacher heard those words, he looked at me and he said, come on in. And thus I feel was the beginning of what God had in store for me. Those words, which were not my words, were spoken through me. And I had come to understand over the years that God had ordained me. Now, fast forward. This church and this ministry was passed on to me before I came or became an ordained minister. I had this church 10 years before I was an ordained minister. 10 years. And when I said to people or told people that I had a church and I was not ordained, and they said to me, you cannot have a church without first being ordained. For 10 years, I stood in the pulpit of this church, preaching and teaching before I was ordained by man. You see, God had already ordained me. And God had already given me what I needed to do the work that He was preparing me to do. That scripture says, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit. And I followed the instructions that was given to me. I followed that prompting which I felt within me. And so I stand here today, from the crown of my head to the soles of my feet, I would say, I've been the pastor of this church for more than or close to 40 years. God called me and I responded. God spoke to me and I responded. And I say to you this day, when there is a calling or a prompting within you, don't doubt, don't have fear. For if you have committed yourself to this path of spiritual growth and unfoldment, then you must know that it is the Spirit of God speaking to you, that it is the Spirit of God that will lead you and guide you into all things, that His purpose be fulfilled in you and through you. And when God has called you and ordained you, you will be fruitful in all that you do. The light of God in you, the consciousness of God within you, the Spirit of God within you will not only be a blessing to you, but a blessing to all that come in contact with your aura and vibration. Now, when Jesus said these things, I command you that ye love one another. Sometimes in the beginning, it is most difficult for us to love those that have mistreated and abused us, those that have disappointed us, misled us. It is hard, difficult to love those that have tried to stab us in the back. But the master teacher said, these things I command you, that ye love one another. Now let me take this a little deeper. When we look out at people, we see individuals, all shapes and sizes and colors. And when one has trespassed against us, instead of acting, we react, failing to realize that the reaction is a negative energy that affects us first. Why? Because that reaction is created within us. And so it being created within us first has to affect us first. That which we want for another is what we first do to ourselves. Now, let me take it a little deeper than that. When we are able to look beyond the physical body, when we are able to look beyond the physical body, there is only the spirit. There is but one spirit. There is but one consciousness and one life. When the master teacher said that ye should love one another, when you look beyond the physical bodies of an individual, you should recognize the spirit, and that spirit is the Spirit of God. When you look beyond the physical body and recognize the spirit and start to love that spirit, not only are you loving God, but you're also loving that which you are, Spirit of God. You cannot say, I love myself. You cannot say, I love God and hate your neighbor. Something is wrong with that picture. You cannot bring forth fruit if you do not love your neighbor. As scripture says, do unto your neighbors as you will have them do unto you. And you would want everyone that you come in contact with to love you, to bless you, to look good upon you. And so it is with life. Also understand this, as Jesus said, bring forth fruit. Fruit represents the good in life. Fruit represents the abundance of life. When we look out at another and we look out at them with negative energies and emotions, those negative energies and emotions and vibrations affects us first. And those energies, those negative energies, after a period of time, begins to crystallize on the cells and tissues and organs and the muscles within our body. There used to be and still are some people that used to say to me, how can you go through life thinking positive all the time? That's not the way life is. Well, when you come to the point and you start to internalize or realize that the negative thinking does not produce positive results, you start to change or you want to change. Scripture says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Change the way you think, change the way you feel, and that will be a transformation in your mind and your body, in your environment, and everything that you are a part of and connected. Love one another as I have loved you. As scripture says, Jesus or God so loved the world. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And the begotten son is the Christ consciousness or the Christ spirit that was in the man Jesus. And that begotten son that God gave because he so loved the world is that same Christ consciousness that is in you and me. This day, this new year, let there be a new beginning in you, that you will love one another as the master teacher has loved you. God bless. Namaste.